Welcome back to No Huddle, everyone, and welcome to my Week 5 NFL predictions. I went a terrible 9-7. I'm on Jason Garrett timing now. Hopefully we can improve. I hope I can go back to that form that I had in the first 2 weeks. But we got 14 games to cover, I believe, because now buys are kicking in to start the year. So let's just get on with it. Here comes Week 5. So starting with Thursday Night Football, we got the San Francisco 49ers facing off the Los Angeles Rams. The 49ers are coming off a loss against Jacksonville. Meanwhile, the Rams are coming off a dramatic win against the Indianapolis Colts. Both teams sit at 3-1. In terms of the game, I'm actually going to take the Rams on this one. I believe that they are the most informed team. The 49ers are just riddled with so many injuries, and I think that the Rams are just in hotter form. If it weren't for a blocked field goal, they would be 4-0. I think that Puka Nacua is going to absolutely feast. I think Devontae Adams is going to be key. And in terms of the 49ers, like whether Mac Jones or Brock Purdy starts, you need to be able to go band for band with the Rams offense and Matthew Stafford. And I don't believe that with the current running game that they have, I don't think that they'll be able to match them. In terms of the key players for this game, I believe that the Rams secondary forcing more turnovers off of Brock Purdy, similar to what Jacksonville did, that will be key for them to win, to get extra drives. And for the 49ers, they have to find the running game. They have to find some sort of consistency because Christian McCaffrey, he's been good at catching passes out of the backfield, but as an overall runner, he's been very, very disappointing. Moving on to the first London game, I believe, between the Vikings and the Cleveland Browns. The Vikings are coming off beating the Steelers in Dublin. Meanwhile, the Browns got their backs blown out by the Detroit Lions. I'm actually going to pick Minnesota in this game. I think that Carson Wentz didn't really have an amazing game against the Steelers defense, and while the Browns defense is also really, really good, I think that Carson Wentz is going to play better. I think that Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are going to once again play very well, and it's just a matter that Dylan Gabriel, I believe, is going to start, and he's just not as good as Aaron Rodgers, even at the age of 40. Even if we see a debut like Jackson Dart, I think that Brian Flores is going to do better coaching up a defensive game plan. And again, I just don't think that the Browns have enough offensive firepower unless Dylan Gabriel turns out to be the next Joe Montana and becomes a superstar against this Vikings defense. In terms of the key players for this game, I think that the Vikings, they need Carson Wentz to play well because we've seen that the games that they've actually been able to win are games where either Carson Wentz played well for the whole game against the Bengals or J.J. McCarthy played well in about a quarter and a half against the Bears. And in terms of the Browns, I think this is Quinshon Judkins. He needs to establish a running game so that Dylan Gabriel's job is made easier because if he can't get it rolling, then Dylan Gabriel is going to have to throw like 40 passes, and that's just a recipe for disaster. And now to the actual Sunday slate, the afternoon slates. We got the Cowboys visiting the New York Jets. Cowboys are coming off a tie against the Green Bay Packers. Meanwhile, the Jets fell to 0-4 after losing to the Miami Dolphins. I'm taking Dallas to win this one pretty comfortably. I think that this is going to be very resemblant of the Week 1 loss that the Jets had to the hands of the Steelers. But I do think that Dak, considering how well he played against the Packers, I think he's going to ride that momentum, play really well once again. I think the connection with George Pickens is finally there. And Javonte Williams has shown that he can add a nice element of running game to the Cowboys offense, which I did not think would be the case at the start of the season. But in terms of the Jets, I don't trust Justin Fields as much as I trust Jordan Love, and he's going to have to make basically zero mistakes to keep up with that Cowboys offense. And if he does it, if he turns the ball over, if he punts one too many times, the Cowboys are just going to win going away. Key players for this game, I think it's Justin Fields for the Jets. I think, once again, like I said, he needs to use his legs and his arm. We need to see that Week 1 Justin Fields, and nothing of what we saw last week even, or in Week 2 against the Bills. He needs to be basically flawless because I don't trust the Jets defense to be able to contain the Cowboys offense. And in terms of the Cowboys offense, I think that George Pickens is going to be the key player because if he shows his inconsistency and has a bad game after that incredible showing against Green Bay, then the offense is once again going to struggle. But I don't think that's going to be the case. Now we got the two terrible teams. This could be the first maybe tank bowl of the season. We got the Giants visiting the New Orleans Saints. The Giants claimed their first win after upsetting the Chargers back in Week 4. Meanwhile, the Saints, they fell to 0-4 after they couldn't really come back and beat the Bills. I'm going to take the Giants in this one. I think that the Saints are going to drop to 0-5. The Saints are just not very good, and the Giants are riding momentum. Like, the Giants have what the Saints don't have, and that's a pretty dominant defense. We saw them absolutely destroy the Chargers' injury-riddled offensive line, and I think they'll just be able to do that with Spencer Rattler, who has been sacked a handful of times, in my opinion. At least I think so. And overall, I just think that Jackson Dart's going to be able to make the plays. He's basically just going to have to be a game manager, because the duel of Jackson Dart and Spencer Rattler, you don't exactly have to throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns to win this. But I just don't think that Spencer Rattler has it in him to be able to play well against a D-line that's going to give him a lot of pressure. Key players for this game, once again, it's the Giants' defensive line. If they can force around 6 sacks or something like that and make Spencer Rattler's life completely uncomfortable, then they'll basically have no threat to lose this game. Meanwhile, if the Saints, if they can protect him with the offensive line and give Spencer Rattler time and keep drives alive while not getting a bunch of sacks, then maybe they can pull out the win, especially if the defense can force Jackson Dart into punts or turnover on downs, similar to what the Chargers did last week. Now we got the Raiders playing the 3-1 Colts. The Raiders fell to 1-3 after losing to the Bears on a blocked field goal. Meanwhile, the Colts, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, they had their undefeated season ending at the hands of the Los Angeles Rams. But I'm still going to take the Colts to win this one to improve to 4-1. I think they showed that they were a legit team. Even if they barely lost to the Rams and they still lost thanks to A.D. Mitchell playing like a dummy, I still think that the Colts are a legit team, and the Raiders are just not good. Jonathan Taylor is probably going to be able to cook the Raiders defense. I think Daniel Jones is going to keep the mistakes minimal, and I think that's going to be a key matchup for this game on which quarterback can make less mistakes. I think Daniel Jones has shown this season that he's finally a lot more polished outside of last week against the Rams. I think he's going to be able to have a 0 turnover game or even a 1 turnover game, and that's going to be enough. And Geno Smith, he needs to stop throwing interceptions. He has 7 interceptions, I believe, in the first 4 games. You cannot win if you have that, even if Ashton Jeanty plays out of his mind. The key players for this game, I believe Brock Bowers is going to be instrumental, because if he can actually catch passes underneath and use the quick game for the Raiders, then Geno Smith's not going to have to go guns a-blazing and throw 30-yard passes that end up getting intercepted. And for the Colts, I think it's going to be Jonathan Taylor to be able to control the tempo of the game. And if he gets it going, then Daniel Jones' job is going to be made a lot easier. And now to another battle of 2 terrible teams. We got the Dolphins playing against the Panthers. Dolphins claimed their first win of the season after beating the Jets on Monday night. Meanwhile, the Panthers were absolutely demolished at the hands of New England Patriots, 42-13. I'm going to take Miami to win this one. Again, we've seen Miami progress from playing like a terrible team to now they looked a little bit more respectable over the last 2 games, and I think they're just going to continue it. We might get a bit of a surprise similar to what we saw with the Falcons against the Panthers, where the Dolphins just go flat, but I think I trust the Dolphins more than I trust the Falcons, just because we've seen Tua play for like the past 3 years. Meanwhile, Michael Penix was only playing for like the last 7 games. And again, I just don't think that the Panthers are a very good team. I think that win against the Falcons was incredibly fluky, and I don't really know how many more times they'll be able to replicate it against a, I guess, serious team in Miami. But the key player for Miami is going to be Jalen Waddle, obviously with Tyreek Hill out for the whole year. Jalen Waddle needs to replicate that form that he had in 2022 and 2023. He needs to be that explosive weapon so that Tua can continue to play decently as he's been in the last 3 weeks. And for the Panthers, they basically need Bryce Young to become Superman so that he can overcome literally every flaw that this team has outside of Ted McMillan. If they can connect for 150 yards and a touchdown, then maybe they'll lose by 20 instead of by 30. And now we got one of the more interesting games of the week. We got the Broncos visiting the Philadelphia Eagles. The Broncos were able to beat up on a terrible Bengals team. Meanwhile, the Eagles barely squeaked by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to improve to 4-0. And I'm going to take Philadelphia in this game. I think that Philly is the overall better team. I don't really trust the Broncos considering their wins have come against the Titans and against the Bengals. Those aren't very impressive at all. Even if Philly is a really not very convincing 4-0, I still think that they're the superior team. I think they have the better quarterback. I just think they have the better superior team all around, except for maybe defense. I think A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith will be key for that matchup. And if Bo Nix isn't able to match Jalen Hurts, which is not impossible, then Philly's going to walk away with this one very comfortably. The key matchup for this game is a head-to-head between Riley Moss and Patrick Surtain against Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Both of them, if one of them can't cover the other, if Riley Moss can't cover Devontae Smith, or if Patrick Surtain can't match up against A.J. Brown, that's going to be absolute food for Jalen Hurts. And hopefully Saquon also plays better. But if one of those two guys, one of those two receivers gets open a lot, then the Philly offense is going to explode like it really hasn't in the last pretty much the whole season. And now we got the Texans versus the Ravens. Both of these teams are 1-3, which is kind of crazy if I told you that at the beginning of the year. But the Texans actually got their first win after beating up on the Titans, basically a glorified bye week. Meanwhile, the Ravens fell to 1-3 after being demolished by the Kansas City Chiefs. This game is really interesting because it looks like Lamar might not even play, along with the other players going to the hospital for the Ravens. Like their injury list is filled to the brim. But I think this one's really tough, but I'm going to take the Houston Texans. Assuming Lamar does not play. If Lamar plays, then I'm probably going to take the Ravens. But overall, without Lamar, Cooper Rush is going to have to start, and I just don't trust him on the back of a really, really bad defense that just added more injuries like Roquan and Marlon Humphrey. If C.J. Stroud can't look like a good quarterback against a team that can't generate any pressure, a team that can't stop the run, a team that can't stop the pass, if he doesn't look good against that, then the Texans might actually be cooked. But I just think that the Texans defense, once again, is going to give Cooper Rush a lot of problems. And I just think that C.J. Stroud is going to be able to be a game manager in this game, score around 25 points against that terrible defense, and be able to win it. The key players, like I said, C.J. Stroud, he needs to step up. If they keep scoring only like 10 points or 20 points like they did against Tampa Bay or Jacksonville, then they're not going to have any chance. And for the Ravens, they need Derrick Henry to wind back the clock to around his 2020 form where he was able to win games almost by himself. They need to give him the rock around 30 times, hope that he gets like 150 yards and 3 touchdowns if they want a chance at winning this game. And now we got the Titans versus the Cardinals. A lot of terrible matchups this week. But overall, the Titans dropped to 0-4 after losing to the Texans. They got shut out 26-0. And the Cardinals, they fell on a last-second field goal to the Seattle Seahawks. But overall, very dull matchup. I don't know how much I'm going to watch of this game, but I'm going to take the Cardinals in this one. They're just a superior team. We already know that. Brian Callahan still has a job somehow. If they get blown out in this week and he's still not fired, then I don't really know what they're waiting for. They're ruining Cam Ward. They're making him develop bad habits. But overall, the Cardinals just don't really need to do much. Like, as long as Kyler Murray doesn't throw 3 boneheaded interceptions and his connection with Marvin Harrison Jr. is adequate, then they'll easily be able to win this game. The key players, they need Cam Ward basically to play like rookie C.J. Stroud or rookie Cam Newton for them to win this game. They need him to throw like 300 yards because everything about this team is dysfunctional. And all the Cardinals need to do is make sure that Cam Ward doesn't turn into Superman, and they can rely on senior citizen Calais Campbell to sack him a couple times along with the rest of the Cardinals defensive line. And if they can pressure him like every team has, then the Titans just have no hope. And now another really interesting matchup, one of like the 3 good games we'll have all week. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers visit the Seattle Seahawks. Tampa Bay is coming off a failed comeback against Philadelphia. Meanwhile, the Seahawks, like I mentioned earlier, they won off a last-second field goal against Arizona. This is a really interesting game, especially because Bucky Irving is reportedly not going to play, or I'm not sure if he's been ruled out, but he is apparently on crutches / a walking boot, which is a really, really bad sign. It's hard to predict, but I'm going to pick Tampa Bay. And the only reason, this might be a bad time, but I'm going with history, and Tampa Bay, I just don't see them starting 3-0 and then falling to 3-2. I don't think they have that gene of just losing back-to-back games of when it rains, it pours. I don't think they have that DNA in them. That might be dumb to hear, but I just think that Tampa Bay is overall going to have the plays. They're going to make the plays. Baker Mayfield, I trust him to be clutch. Outside of that one throw that he had against Philadelphia, he's been great in the clutch all season long. And overall, I just think their run defense was able to stop Saquon, so I think they'll do a great job on Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Overall, I just think it'll go down to a drive between Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, and I think I trust Baker Mayfield slightly more than Sam. But the key players for this one is once again Sam Darnold. He needs to make the plays. He's gonna have to make a drive or two. He can't force any mistakes and give Tampa Bay short fields. If he does, then the game's gonna get away from them really quickly. And for the Buccaneers, their run defense, because if Kenneth Walker has a really good game to make Sam Darnold's life easier, then they're really gonna struggle to win. But if they can contain Kenneth Walker just like they did against Saquon, then I think they'll have a much better time in terms of stopping drives. And now we got the Lions playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. We got a cat ball. This one's going to be ugly. The Lions, they beat up on the Browns 34-10 to claim their third win in a row. Meanwhile, the Bengals, they fell at the hands of the Broncos 28-3. Shout out to the Falcons. But in terms of this game, this is going to be very cut and throat. I'm taking the Lions to win this one. This shouldn't really be a big trouble considering the Bengals have a terrible defense and a terrible offense. Meanwhile, the Lions have good offenses and defenses. I don't really know what to say. Jake Browning apparently still going to be the quarterback for the Bengals. He's not going to do anything because he now sucks. And the defense hasn't really shown us anything. I don't even know if Shamar Stewart has been playing. I think he might still be hurt. But it really doesn't matter. The Lions are going to win this game. If the Bengals want to win, then Jake Browning has to turn literally into Joe Burrow and maybe drop 40 points against what is going to be a very ferocious Lions defense. And for the Lions, if they sack Jake Browning around like 3 times, if they just force some pressure, force him into making mistakes, then he's not even going to be able to get the ball to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. This is going to be a very long game. Would have been really exciting if Joe Burrow was playing, though. And now we got the Washington Commanders playing against the Los Angeles Chargers. We saw the Commanders falling to the Atlanta Falcons with Marcus Mariota, 34-27. Meanwhile, the Chargers, they got upset by the Giants, 21-18 in MetLife. Very disappointing considering they got my pick wrong. But either way, I'm going to take the Commanders in this one. I don't know if Jaden Daniels is going to play, but I still trust them to win this game. Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, obviously, they're both out. And the whole Chargers offensive line is now not very good. We saw how much the Giants were able to pressure them. And as good as Justin Herbert is, as good as Marion Hampton can be, if they don't have a good offensive line to block for them, then they're not going to be able to do anything. Drives are going to end very, very quickly, regardless of how good Herbert is. I think even if Marcus Mariota or Jaden Daniels is playing, I think they'll be able to make the key plays because they'll have way more protection, they'll have more time to throw, and overall, I just trust that because games are won in the trenches, and the trenches for the Chargers right now, they're in the toilet. In terms of the key players, if the Chargers are able to protect Herbert for a little bit or not force him to get sacked a bunch of times or get hit a bunch of times like against New York, then they'll be maybe fine. The Commanders, they have to force pressure to be able to win this game because if Herbert is given a long time, then it doesn't matter what Marcus Mariota or Jaden Daniels do. They're not going to be able to outgun Herbert at this point in the season. And now to Sunday Night Football. We got the Patriots visiting the Buffalo Bills. What is a pretty good AFC East showdown. Really hasn't been the case for like ever because of the Brady and Josh Allen era now. But the Patriots are coming off of demolishing the Panthers 42-13, while the Bills had a slight scare against the Saints, but were all able to pull away. I'm going to take Buffalo in this game. I don't really trust New England yet. They haven't really shown their greatness, if you can call it that, against great teams. They beat up on the Panthers and they beat the Dolphins, but then they lost to the Raiders and they lost to the Steelers. Not an overall impressive body of work. The Bills haven't had the hardest schedule either, but they've looked more convincing and they've actually won games. Plus, they have the proof over the last couple of years that they've just been a overall more dominant team in this division. But I just trust Josh Allen more than Drake May. And while if the Patriots can put up a fight, then I'll respect them more. I just don't really see them being able to match Josh Allen, especially at home in another Sunday night game. Like Drake May is going to have the best game of his career if he wants to win the game against the MVP. But the key players in this game are going to be the Bills' auxiliary receivers outside of Khalil Shakir and the Patriots, their secondary outside of Christian Gonzalez. Because if Christian Gonzalez can clamp up Khalil Shakir, then that's a really good win for them. But then if the rest of the defense can't cover Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox or Jackson Hawes or James Cook out of the backfield, then they're not going to be able to do anything. Like you can only do so much by covering the number one receiver. Plus, you have to contain Josh with his legs. So the Patriots, other defenders, they have to step up for Christian Gonzalez to be able to give them a chance to win this game. And finally, we have Monday Night Football. We have the Jaguars playing the Chiefs. The Jaguars beat the undefeated 49ers to improve to 3-1, while the Chiefs, it looks like their offense finally rebounded after a dominant win over Baltimore. This was another pretty complicated game to pick because of the form that both of these teams are on, but I'm still going to take the Kansas City Chiefs. I personally trust them more on offense. It looks like they finally recovered with Xavier Worthy coming back. And even though it's not very impressive to drop 37 on the Ravens, it's by far the best that they've looked. And it's one of the few offensive shootouts that they had, I guess, over like the past 3 years. It's one of the few times where the offense has actually looked very explosive. But overall, I think that the key players in this will be the Jaguars' ability to force turnovers. They forced 3 or more in every single game that they've had. If they can force Mahomes to make those mistakes and give them short fields or give Trevor Lawrence short fields, then they'll be able to outscore them. But if the Chiefs' key player, Mahomes as always, if he's able to cut back on those mistakes, which he hasn't really made any this season, if he can avoid throwing a bad interception or a bad fumble, or if Kareem Hunt can't fumble, or if Isaiah Pacheco can't fumble, then they'll be able to sustain drives. And personally, if they start on their own territory, I don't really trust Trevor Lawrence to be able to convert. So I think the Chiefs are going to win and improve to what is now 3-2 at the end of week 5. And that is all for today. We got a lot to unpack. Even though 4 teams aren't playing, we still got 14 relatively exciting games. There are a lot of dull matchups, but a lot of interesting games too. So if you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and liking the video, as any support is truly appreciated. And I'll see you guys next week at the end of week 5.